Hello again. You've completed the first two steps in planning your document. You've created a message and you've organised your ideas into a structure. Now it's time to consider how to collect the evidence that will support your ideas. Logic is never enough to persuade anyone. Ask any lawyer. To quote Rudolf Flesch, a leading teacher in effective writing, "You'll never convince anyone by logic alone. People will also need evidence." But doesn't it seem a little bit strange to be thinking about collecting the evidence after we've worked out our ideas? Surely we look for the evidence before coming to some kind of conclusion. Well, that makes sense when we're talking about research. But here we're talking about planning a document, which is a different activity. And if you think about it, you can't look for evidence until you know what it is you're looking for evidence for. The only thing that evidence can support is an idea of some sort. So research, like any other kind of thinking, can be thought of as having two stages. First stage thinking, gathering information, and second stage thinking, collating and organising that information. Now, of course, in the real world, those two stages don't follow each other neatly, one after the other. They often repeat into each other. We call it an iterative process. First stage thinking leads to second stage thinking, but then organising your ideas makes you realise you'll need to look for new evidence, and so you go back to first stage thinking. So be prepared to change the structure of your ideas to fit new evidence. But also be prepared to limit the range of your search for evidence to the ideas that you want to support. So in this little video, we'll be looking at this important research activity. How much evidence do you collect? What evidence do you collect? Where do you look? How much should you include? And how do you order it and present it? Collecting evidence can be time-consuming, it can be stressful. A little work can result in a mountain of facts and figures, particularly as information becomes so much more readily available now than it was 10, 20 years ago. So start with your key points. What facts and figures do you need to back them up? Look at the information through the eyes of your primary reader. What are the key persuasive factors that would be most effective with those readers? People are often persuaded by concrete numbers, simple, strong pieces of evidence, names, clear and convincing comparisons, precise specifications. But people will also be persuaded by information that fits their paradigms. The word paradigm, we could also say mindset, refers to the mental patterns through which we view reality. Paradigms or mindsets determine what we believe to be true. Some say they determine the very things that we see and cannot see. Some paradigms are written down as rules or regulations or laws. Some are moral codes. Others are never written down. They are the deepest assumptions through which we view reality. And all of our thinking is based on paradigms. Your reader will be reading your document through their mindsets. So if you can find evidence or present evidence in ways that match your reader's paradigms or mindsets, then you will be more persuasive. Now, information can come from a bewilderingly wide range of sources, and probably the best piece of advice to give to anyone who is setting out on a research journey is to say, talk to people. Find the authorities in the field, search out the gurus, if you will, the founts of all wisdom. Conversations with those people will take you further and faster than virtually any other research method. Develop a network of contacts in key positions and cultivate them. Now, as well as making those personal contacts, remember that you can find information in all sorts of other centres of learning and information. Libraries, information offices or centres, archives, and of course these days websites and other sources on the web. The internet is a very powerful source of information, but it is also more or less unregulated. So remember that anything you take off the internet, you need to be very careful to vouch for the accuracy of that information. So we've looked a little at what information you collect, what evidence you need to find, how you look, and perhaps how much you should include. Now we also need to look at how we order that information. Collating here means putting your evidence in order. The most important aspect of collating your evidence is to establish a trail so that you can find your way back to the source of a piece of information with ease. Collate the information that you discover and collate also the sources of that information. You might consider creating a card index, for example, or some sort of electronic database on a computer. Now, organising your evidence in the document itself is effectively a matter of displaying it as simply and as clearly as possible. And the simplest way is usually not as text, not as words written down in sentences. In advertising terms, the eye buys. So find ways of presenting your information in as visual a way as possible. Evoke an image in the reader's mind. Use graphics and diagrams to help display your information easily. The picture might not be a real one. It may not be a graph or a pie chart. Stories, examples, quotations, even metaphors embedded within your text can all help to create images in your reader's mind. For some readers, of course, numbers are the hardest evidence. Measurable facts will outweigh speculative opinion. You can't argue with the numbers, except that you can, of course, argue with what the numbers might mean. So, if a point that you're making uses a word that suggests an amount, you will need a number to back that word up. If you're using words like several, numerous, extensive, insufficient, massive, unacceptable, minimal or significant, then you will need numerical evidence to support those words. The words are, we say, value laden, and one person's value of that word will be very different from another person's. Large quantities of numerical evidence are probably best removed from the text altogether. Numbers and words, generally speaking, don't mix. So use appendices or even footnotes if you must. So let's remind ourselves of the key points that we've covered here. What facts and figures do you need to support your key points? Consider also the key persuasive factors, which ones will most influence your reader. We're persuaded by strong, simple evidence clearly presented, but we're also persuaded by the evidence that fits our paradigms or our mindsets. So if you can organise your evidence in such a way that it will fit the way that your reader sees the world, you'll be more persuasive. Information can come from a wide range of sources. Start with people. People tend to be the fastest and most effective way to the information that you need. But use other sources of information as well, and take great care when that source is on the internet. Collate your information so that you don't spend an awful long time finding the source of a piece of information that you found 2 or 3 weeks back, and organise and present your information in the document as visually as possible, using diagrams, charts, tables, maps. And remember that large amounts of information can be consigned to appendices or to footnotes. Okay, so that's the end of this section. We're moving on now to creating our outline.